I admit that with these last few videos, I have been indulging in nostalgia. I don't think all looking to the past is nostalgia. There is significant value in drawing from the past to better understand the world and to expand one's own perspective with the ideas and feelings and sensations of the past. Otherwise, one merely observes the world with the trends and tendencies and ideals of the present, which is inevitably limiting. But at the same time, I'm not going to pretend like I'm doing something very high minded and just going back to everything from my youth. That really is, in one part, nostalgia, in just the basest and most sentimental sense of the term. I think of things highly because I grew up on them, and I liked them then. And a fragment of that liking preserves now. It's tempered by critical judgment and the inevitable cynicism of an adult perspective, but that liking is still there, and I don't think it's irrelevant. Kids are not stupid, okay? I like things and I did dislike things as a kid. I did not unequivocally accept everything. And what I liked for a reason. It might not have been a reason I was able to explain that well as a small child. It might not be a reason that is relevant to me now, but there is a reason. My love of Pokemon, I think, really has a lot to do with the fact that there are these kids going out on adventures, having new experiences, that they have a real sense of independence and responsibility. They get to really live in the world and see new things. And their stories are taken very seriously in the games and even in the anime to an extent. There's no sense of winking irony or sarcasm or forced inanity that I didn't like even when I was a kid. Digimon, I do think a lot of my liking is nostalgia, but also I think the first few Digimon seasons are genuinely quite good. Of them, season 3, the Tamers season, is probably the best. It is the one that holds up the most today. But I will absolutely stick up for season 1, Digimon Adventure. I want to be clear that I'm talking about the original Digimon Adventure. I'm not talking about the remake that they made in 2020. And I think the presence of that remake does demonstrate that my liking for the original Digimon is not just nostalgia. Because the remake has a lot of the same characters, a lot of the same plot points. It should appeal to me, and yet it really doesn't. I watched some of it, and it's just missing something. It took me a while to figure out what it was. But really, it's that sense of genuine adventure, genuine uncertainty and mystery, and going out into a strange world and uncovering things and having journeys with people you get to know and really care about. Digimon, compared to Pokemon, is much more character-driven. Pokemon is not exactly a character-focused show. Certainly, I don't want to say that character is irrelevant to the Pokemon anime. There are characters I still like. I talked about Dawn before. I talked about Serena. Those characters stick with me, and even some of the characters of the day I think are done well. Even Ash himself, despite being kind of your typical stubborn anime boy shonen protagonist, is appealing to me at times. But Digimon Adventure is much more of a character show. You take the character dynamics out of Pokemon, you still have the battles, you still have a lot of things that people think about when they think about that show. They think about the Pokemon. Digimon is focused on the people. It's focused on these kids, these digi-destined children and tweens who are very believably children. They are a bit overwhelmed by their experiences. They do not have the answers. They do not always know how to react to the situations that they run into. And that really makes them much more human to me. That makes these characters much more worth paying attention to. And a lot of that is just gone in the remake. My problem with a lot of anime as a whole is that the whole medium has just gotten way too glossy for my tastes. The production values are too high, in a way. It's too smooth. I realize that might sound weird to some of you, like, do you want your shows to look worse? People might say. And, well, yes and no. Obviously, there's a lot to like from the more modern fluidity. There's a cleanliness to it. But I liked some things when they were a bit dirtier, a bit rougher. And I that's not nostalgia. That is just a real sense that if you're doing something that emphasizes going out into strange places and having adventures, there should be something a bit unsettling or uncertain about it. Should be something a bit kind of rustic and rough and imperfect. And a lot of modern, nice looking anime just looks a bit too nice for me, which can work for some things, I suppose. It's certainly pretty, but if you're trying to convey this sense of rugged, uncertain adventuring, then it's not necessarily the best choice. I feel the same way about Pokemon in more modern seasons. I feel the same way about a lot of adventure-focused things nowadays, anime, whether that's updates of shows that I remember liking as a kid, or new things I've tried to watch. There's just this layer of glossiness to it that is actually quite distancing. It lacks that immediacy. But the other part of why I don't think that the remake is as good is the character dynamics have just been gutted, and the character dynamics are why the show matters. It's not just focusing on Tai as the protagonist. He's your standard anime protagonist. There's very much a mold. But Digimon focuses on all of these kids. They all get their chance in the spotlight. They all are treated relatively equally. And there is 8 of them, so that's kind of hard. But there is time devoted to the stories and characters of all of them. And I appreciate that. And I also like how there is this genuine sense of being lost, of being a bit forlorn. So much of art is not just what something factually is, but what the experience of it is, the phenomenology of it. Characters in this show frequently stumble upon places they do not know how to handle, that are not ready to hand to them in the Heideggerian sense. There's a distance, there's a remove. They do not know how to handle a lot of these ruins and a lot of these strange structures that they come across. And when they do figure it out, it's as much because of luck as anything else, which you could say is contrived, but I would say that it conveys a sense of the character's powerlessness in this world. To use another Heideggerian term, what is the worldliness of the world here? What is the specific experience, the specific impressions of the world? And I would say it is a world that is a bit uncompromising, a bit arcane and opaque. It is not a world that responds to human desires and ambitions in an easy and obvious way. The worldhood of the world here is that it's a bit difficult to figure out, that it overwhelms the ambitions and the desires of these kids. These are just kids who are transported to a world that they don't understand at first, and they just really want to get home. Then they have all these other challenges that they have to face, but very rarely are they in control of themselves. And I think a lot of this is tied into the era in which the show was made, which is an era that seems kind of distant to us now, and is certainly distant to some of you who are younger than me. Heidegger talks about ruins and what they are. What is the phenomenology of ruins? What makes them different from, say, another dwelling? Is it just that it's old? Well, no. It's that it's something that does not have this immediate connection to humanity anymore. It did exist in this world of experience, the world in which people lived, but that has been lost. The original Digimon was at a time when the internet, believe it or not, was genuinely this wild and strange place. The idea of being sucked into the internet, sucked into this digital world, was like going into the frontier. It was going to this place where everything was in flux, everything was unexpected. Nothing could really be prepared for. It is fundamentally different from the way people interact with the internet now, where it is just everywhere. It is fully immersive. And there are good sides and bad sides to that, but the internet is not strange anymore. Digimon is so, as a series, as a basic concept, tied to a world wherein the internet genuinely was strange, and that is very clear in this original Digimon adventure. And I think our present distance from that time actually is good for the show. It actually increases that sense of estrangement, that sense of alienation from the familiar and predictable. It transforms our experience with this world. This world is already presented as something rather odd and arcane, a world that has secrets that it will not easily reveal, a world where there is a lot of bizarre items, bizarre circumstances that are just not explained. There are hints, there are implications, but there are not a lot of very clear explanations. There are random items from our world that are just present in these most unexpected and rather odd areas of the digital world. It feels very fragmented, and that sense of fragmentation is amplified by how the series as a whole is very much tied to an era that we are distant from. That's not just a function of time. There are movies about, say, New York in the 1920s or 30s that I, as someone who was in New York in the 2020s, feel very close kinship to that world. But Digimon is specifically about the internet in a time when the internet felt experimental. That it does not anymore changes our experience to it. And that strangeness is what I really love. My favorite episode of the show, directed by the great Mamoru Hosoda, is when Tai comes back to the real world, but he doesn't really feel like he belongs there. He's an outsider now, and he knows he needs to go back, and he sees Kari, his younger sister, and he hates to say goodbye to her. And it's a very heartbreaking, very poignant episode with a lot of these very long, deep pauses that emphasize a sense of unknowability, of uncertainty. And that's what I really liked most about the show, how it was unafraid of that uncertainty. So thank you all for watching. If you liked yourself today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. It is quite amusing that this was, as a child, my first experience to the work of Hosoda, who is now my favorite non-Miyazaki anime director, and has made a lot of films that are very dear to me, such as Wolf Children. His touch is very evident on the episodes and parts of the show that he did interact with. Even as a younger man then, his artistry is very evident. Also, I just wanted to highlight a scene I really like later in Digimon Adventure, wherein Tai is reminiscing about not being able to help Kari, how she was very sick, he was afraid she would die, and he blamed himself. Digimon Adventure was not afraid to go there and really linger in that deep uncomfortability of people. That's what really makes it stand out to me. Anyway, tune in soon for next analysis. We'll be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.